The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Clement. I'm with the support team here at Microsurvey, and our presenter here will be Ken Fossey. He's the product manager for the mobile products here at Microsurvey. So that'll be FieldGenius, CVR, and the Android version of FieldGenius. So today we're just going to go over some GIS functionality in FieldGenius. I am recording the broadcast, so if you are having trouble connecting or listening or anything like that, don't worry. We'll send an email afterwards with the recording of the webinar. And any questions you may have during the webinar, you can use the chat on the right side, and I'll be monitoring that chat while Ken does his presentation. So I'll pass it off on to Ken, and we'll go from here.
Great, thanks, Chris. Welcome, everyone. Today I wanted to cover GIS functionality in FieldGenius. And so FieldGenius is a survey product. We built this originally for surveying, but of course as GIS came along, we had requests to add some basic functionality to FieldGenius so that if surveyors were out in the field doing survey work, they could collect some basic GIS information without having to use another application, another hardware and everything. Also, of course, in the early days of some of the GIS work, the accuracy was not the same as survey grade. So we did have some users that wanted to collect GIS data at a higher accuracy level, and FieldGenius allowed them to do that. So again, as we built FieldGenius, it was designed for surveyors, and we've added in some ability to collect basic GIS data. As a result of that, the GIS data is not fully integrated, and it's not to FieldGenius, and it's not designed to be a GIS field data collection program. If that is the main goal of what you are doing out in the field, you're better served to go to something like the Leica Xeno Mobile or Esri ArcPad that are dedicated GIS functions and have better back office integration to the GIS systems, where you can pass jobs in and out and you can collect GIS data and update and create things on the fly. So for FieldGenius, I thought it'd be good to do this webinar because, again, it can be a little confusing on how we've structured all this because, again, it wasn't designed as a GIS app. And so you kind of have to know your way around a little bit to get everything configured right and to collect the data and export it. So what I'm going to cover in the presentation here is collecting GIS data. Just general import. You can import a shapefile from the GIS system as a background if you want. And then we use a feature editor. And this is one of the main differences is that you actually have to set up your features and attributes, plan it out ahead of time, and construct the feature file that we use. It is linked with the Automap file, so you can collect a code for a point and then features and attributes. However, if you synchronize these, you can use the Automap code is the same as the feature code, then it streamlines it a little bit. I'll collect a couple data points in FieldGenius, just showing you how that works. I'll also just show you the file structure, where everything's stored, so you know where it is, and then just export the file that I've created, or the GIS data that I've created out of FieldGenius. Then we export it into a shapefile that can be then imported into either a CAD program or a GIS program. So with that being said, what I'm going to start with is when you start a new project, I'm going to create a new project in here, GIS Demo 1. When you set up the project, you typically go through, you set your units in scale, let's stay in meters, you set your coordinate system that you're going to be working in. I'm going to leave it at the default here for us, UTM 8311. And this is where you set your Automap that you want to use and your feature file. So the default that comes with FieldGenius out of the box is we have a default Automap called survey.csv, and you can create your own Automaps. And this is the Automap really is the list of the codes that you want to use and assign to points that you're collecting. And it also allows you to configure other things like the symbols and everything else. Where this is stored is, again, I'm using the PC version here. Under Documents, there's a microsurvey folder, then a FieldGenius folder. If you're using Evidence Recorder, it would be listed here. And then you've got your FieldGenius Projects folder. So this lists all the projects I've currently been working on the PC here. And at the bottom, it gives a list of the different Automap files. So in this case, I've created an Automap file called feature_demo that I'm going to use. So I have searched the file folders, selected the Automap file I want to use. And since we're doing GIS data, we have to attach a feature file. If you don't attach a feature file when you create the project here, the GIS option to select features and attributes isn't available when you're storing point data. So again, here, in the same thing, the feature files are stored within the FieldGenius project folder. And they have the .fea extension on them. So I'm going to select feature demo and open that. So I'm going to continue my setup and go ahead and create the project. So I'm not going to connect to an instrument today. I'm just going to use the option to create a point in FieldGenius by clicking on the map. And if people are interested, that's a setting you can use. If you go to the top toolbar and settings, it's the map position select. You can toggle that on or off. So I'm going to do that. And now if I select a point on the map, I can store a point. So storing a point, again, you have point number 1 and the description. And this is the Automap file description. So you can select it from the list, or you can start typing in the name of the description for the point that you want and select it. And it'll scroll through. So if I want to do TCR, and now you see that because I've loaded the feature file, we do have the GIS attributes available here. The buttons would be grayed out if that was not loaded. And now I can select a feature that I want to associate with this, and then we've got the attributes that are available. As I mentioned earlier, so I'm going to just kind of cancel out of this, that we have to set this up ahead of time. Just like in a GIS system, a lot of times you pass down all the features and attributes that you want to use on the project. In FieldGenius, you need to create these ahead of time. And to do that, we use our feature file editor. So when you install FieldGenius on your computer, it will create a microsurvey FieldGenius folder. And one of the options in there is the feature list editor. So I've opened that. Let me just drag it over here. Oops, looks like I got two of them open. It opened one before. So this is the microsurvey feature list editor, and it allows you to define features, and then for each feature, it allows you then to add attributes. You can open an existing feature file, save the file after modification, or create a new one. In this case, I'm going to open up the feature file that we started, and I'm going to open the feature demo file here. So it already has a number of features listed that have already been added. And to add a new one, you can click the Add button. Or if you want to select an existing one, just highlight it, and then you see the attributes associated with that feature are listed below. So in this case, I'm going to add a new feature. I'm going to add fence to the database. And since it's new, there's no attributes associated with it. So I can add attributes. And when you add attributes, we do have a limited list of attribute types you can set up. You can set up a numeric attribute where you're allowed to input a number, text where you can input a field. You can create a menu, a list, or a true or false. In this case, fence, I'm going to do a menu item and select OK. And that brings up the menu description. And I'm going to put in that I want to enter the type fence. And so what it's doing is just putting the description, and then we're setting up a database field for that type. And now I can add the items to that. So if it's a wood fence, metal fence, chain link, plastic. And I'm going to say that this is a required field. So if you're using a, if you're in the field and you want to collect some information on fences, it's going to be required that you choose what type of material the fence is made out of. So you can go ahead and say, OK. And so we've added the attributes type in here. I'm going to add another attribute in this case. I'm going to make it numeric. And this is going to be length. And again, database field, I'm just tabbing to get the length filled in. And you can set minimum and maximums in here. So if it's a length, it's obviously going to be at least 1 foot or meter or whatever units you're in. You can set a maximum length if you want. So 1,000 and a default. And then you can set the decimal places. So you have some options you can set in here. And again, it's going to be a required field. So I've set a couple of attributes that I want to collect for fence. So again, it takes some time if you're going out into the field and you're going to be collecting some GIS data to set this up ahead of time. But it does allow you to collect GIS data with FieldGenius. So I'm going to save the list. I've made some modifications to it. So I can save it as a new list, or in this case, I'm going to update the features_demo list and overwrite that list. So again, with FieldGenius for Windows, to get in GIS attributes, you have to go ahead and add them into a feature list that the program can use, and use the application feature list editor to do that. and it has to be done ahead of time before you go into the field. So again, if you're doing repeat business, out with survey, let's say like you're doing lot surveys, and yeah, you want to do some GIS information on fences or trees or whatever. You can add this in and copy that file and use it over and over on different receivers and just place it in the projects folder. So again, repeatable stuff, you can go ahead and do that. So I've saved everything. I'm going to exit out of the feature editor, and let's go back into FieldGenius now. So I'm going to cancel out of what I was doing here. We talked about shapefiles. So what I'm going to do is just bring in a GIS file, and I'm going to import a shapefile. So again, if you have a GIS system or CAD system and you want to bring in GIS data in the form of shapefile, you can do that. You need to export it out of that system and get the shapefiles. And again, what I've done, typically if I'm dealing with shapefiles, I'll create a shapefile folder, and then I will bring in the exports from the desktop system and drop them into the folder in the projects folder in microsurvey. Again, it's more of a manual step, and then you can get the shapefile. It's .shp, and go ahead and open that. I'm going to associate the codes, or just maybe the figure numbers, with what I import into FieldGenius. So it gives you an idea of what's been imported. And because that one point earlier, I just have to get the scale and zoom in on the shapefile that's being brought in. So that's how you import a shapefile, and you can work with it within FieldGenius. Now again, if I'm here and I want to add a point, I'm going to go ahead and, oops, I clicked on the line there, exit. And let me go, there we go. It's just when you're in FieldGenius, if you're zoomed in and you're creating a point manually like this, it tends to, there's an option to try and select lines that it was using that I hadn't turned off. So anyways, I'm going to, a point that I want to collect here, I can go to, excuse me. So let's see if, fence is listed. It isn't, because I'd added it to the file after I'd opened the program. So what I'm going to do is just, I think what I can do is exit and open another project, and then just come back into this one, and it will refresh and reopen that file and attach the feature file. Oh, that's interesting.
Ken,
It did not attach.
Just remember you added the GIS attribute, not the Automap description.
Oh, correct. Thank you. So, as Chris reminded me, I did one part of this, which was the GIS attribute. So if I try to add fence here, fence is not in the Automap library. I added it to the GIS, but I didn't add it to the Automap. I can say yes. And then now, if I go to store a point, it does take the Automap code that I put in, recognizes that it is in the feature list, and pulls it up directly. And from here, you can see that I added the type. Again, I added selection. We're going to go with the wood fence, and the length is going to be 20. And okay. Now we store that point. And the GIS information is now associated with the point in FieldGenius. So you can go along and collect different GIS information for points within FieldGenius. It is a little time consuming. You have to plan ahead if you want to do that. But again, if it's repeatable stuff, once you've gotten it set up once, you're pretty much good to go from then on. So you can go ahead and collect your data. And then when you're done, to get the GIS data out and get it to either a CAD or a GIS program, you have to export it as a shapefile. And that's the only, within FieldGenius right now, that's the only export format that we support that will go ahead and export out the GIS information. So the shapefile export is complete. And now if I look in my documents, microsurvey, FieldGenius, and my projects, the GIS Demo 1 was the project we were working on. And you can see that we have the shapefile export folder has now been created. Within that folder, it has created a number of files that are needed to import into a GIS program. So you can see this folder would be what you would need to, again, transfer back to the GIS program and use the import function to import the shapefile to bring everything back in. So this covers kind of the utilization of collecting basic GIS data within FieldGenius for Windows. This was designed and added in after the FieldGenius for Windows application had been created to just allow some basic functionality for the guys in the field that wanted to collect basic information while they're out there doing the surveying and not have to deal with multiple applications. Of course, since then, GIS has grown and there's been kind of an integration and merging of features and functionality. The accuracy of instruments and the cost of those have come down significantly, so that it's now easier to collect more accurate position information with GIS systems in the hardware. So one of the things we're working on, for example, in FieldGenius for Android, is to make to allow the collection of, again, GIS data, but integrated into the application and be a little more seamless than what we had in the Windows version here. I think that's covers pretty much everything I wanted to go through today on how to use FieldGenius, the feature editor, and just how to collect GIS data once you've got that all configured. And again, once it's configured, it's really just a quick click of the button to, when you're storing the point, to grab your GIS data and then, pick the feature that you want to assign to it and add the information. And we can, like I say, make some of this information required so that you do require the people to collect that information on that feature before they store the point. All right, that completes the presentation for today. Chris, do we have any questions that have come in?
Yeah, we actually had a question here. I answered him privately, but might as well answer to everyone else as well. He had a question if FieldGenius can import GeoJSON files.
Right. Right now, no, we don't. FieldGenius for Windows will not import a GeoJSON file. We are, again, we're working on our FieldGenius for Android application, which is based on a newer architecture, and that is one of the things we are working on actually pretty soon here is to add the ability to import GeoJSON files into FieldGenius for Android. It's not in the current version, but it's, I guess you could say, high on our development priorities list going forward here. Any other questions, Chris?
Hey, no, that was all for questions for today.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you attending, and have a good rest of your day.